Hello, everybody. It's Thor, and today we are going to be taking a look at the astrology of job loss. And the reason why I'm doing this video today is I just was reading the headlines today where Google's laying off 12,000 people. So we're entering a time of a lot of economic turbulence, and I think that everybody can feel this turbulence in the environment. There's a lot of problems going on in the world, and we've been struggling as a planet ever since 2020, and we're seeing a lot of the ramifications of everything that's taken place. Well, people are concerned about their jobs. So I want to show you, if you have your astrology chart, what kind of planetary periods could you be in that would indicate some sort of change in your job situation. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. For those of you that are new to my channel, make sure you like and subscribe. I do Vedic sidereal astrology, which is the astrology of ancient India. If you're new to it, welcome. Most people are familiar with Western tropical astrology, so your sign may be different using Vedic astrology. My goal is 10,000 subscribers, so make sure you like it and subscribe. If you're interested in a private reading, check for details down below. I do have a special discount running for the remaining January. So make sure you check that out because it's a really good deal. Also, we have a disclaimer. This astrology reading is for entertainment purposes only. This is not meant to replace professional financial advice. So let's talk a little bit about job loss because a lot of people, when they see it on the surface, it does seem like a bad thing because it is tied to our economic security. So it's a very fearful type of event that people obviously don't like to experience. But in a lot of ways, even if our karma does indicate a negative event, a lot of times there's something positive that does come out of it, either a growth of your consciousness, or, for example, if you leave a job you didn't like, it leads to a better situation in the future. So sometimes not all job loss is inherently bad. That's what I want to preface this all with. I'm going to take you to the presentation. Now, Saturn is going to be transiting the 11th house of Aquarius from January 2023 to March of 2025. Remember, Saturn just entered Aquarius on January 17th. And the 11th house has to do with the economy, the stock market, the masses, the everyman. So in a broad way, Saturn represents setbacks, delays, problems. So when Saturn's entering the natural 11th house, it's showing a lot of problems coming in the way of in the economy, how people make their money. And I do see massive government intervention happening. However, Saturn is very slow to respond. Saturn will take its time as it's formulating legal bills and formulating parliaments and congresses to debate, to vote on these bills. So it's a very slow reaction time. Saturn simply reacts to events. Saturn does not foresee events. So the reaction that I see from the world governments is going to be a very slow reactionary type of response to some sort of stimuli, either a very fast event that may happen, something like a Mars event. Maybe we'll see some sort of uh, event that is a catalyst for some sort of economic crisis, and the government comes in and intervenes. Well, anyways, with all this economic anxiety, we're seeing a lot of the signs. Google announced they're cutting 12,000 jobs. And I heard a few months back, wasn't it Facebook and some of the other tech companies also cut jobs? So we're already seeing these signs. I think people are already feeling the earth move underneath them with the economy, even though some of the talking heads on TV might be saying everything is fine with a smile on their face. Now, many people are very concerned about your job security. So that's why I really am focused on making this video. And now I'm going to talk about the karma of job loss, and then I'll tell you the specific planetary periods. So, when you do have a job loss, it is a result of your karma. I want you to be aware of that. It isn't an accident. Everything in your life is a result of your karma. So, for example, your job, your career, your lover, your marriage, your parents, your degree of respect in life are all part of your karma. How people treat you, that's part of your karma. How you look, how people perceive you, that's all part of your karma. So if you could imagine, you're essentially in people like to call this a simulation. Maybe we're in some sort of karmic simulation. So even the people's responses to you is part of your karma. When a job loss comes, be aware that this event is very karmic. Okay. So it isn't some fluke accident that you get a pink slip. This is a very much planned event. Of course, these negative events are always to prod the consciousness, to expand the consciousness. So that's why I told you earlier, not all job losses are bad. So, for example, you may hate your job, just like I said earlier, and then a harsh planet comes in and severs the relationship very forcefully. And after you heal from the initial shock, you might find a better job. You might get a better situation, or at least a situation that you're much happier in. You see, consciousness does not like things to be stagnant. That's the number one thing to be aware of. So if you're in a stagnant situation, you're in a job where you're just kind of stagnating, a lot of times a forceful planet will go in there and sever the relationship. Sometimes the planets will cause events where maybe you feel like you're being disrespected at work and you just quit on your own. Sometimes the planets will create situations where maybe you're forcefully terminated. So this can happen in many different ways. And we're going to talk about how the planets, what kind of ways they act here. So let's go take a look at that. Let's go back to the chart here, our presentation. Okay, so here are the planetary periods you want to look at as far as job loss. Specifically, you want to look at the Vimshatari Dasha system. So you really want to be aware of what Mahadasha you are in and what Bhukti you're in. Remember that you're always within a planetary period of a Mahadasha or a Bhukti. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about each of the periods that could indicate a job loss. Okay, you're in a K2 period. That can always indicate some sort of job loss. If there's other indicators in your life that there's a job loss that could be imminent. Remember, with all of these situations, always look for signs in your environment that something's about to transpire. Most of the time, these things don't come out of nowhere, although during a period of the eighth lord, it could come out of nowhere. Okay. But most of these are kind of like a series of events that you're going to see manifest. So always be aware of what planetary period you're in, and then notice your environment. Remember, a lot of what the spiritual teachers teach us is how to expand our awareness, becoming aware of the situation you're in. Are there people gossiping? Are there people talking about layoffs? Is there signs that you're seeing people be terminated? Is there a negative conflicted situation arising? So always be aware of what situations are arising so you can stay ahead of the event. The period of the 12th lord can lead to layoffs, resignation, retirement. However, I do want to let you know, if you're in a period of the 12th lord, it's usually more mild. It's usually not so traumatic. So a period of the 12th lord is a lot of times when we see resignations or retirements. Sometimes there's layoffs because the 12th house does represent endings. Okay. But it's usually more mellow. There's usually more of a bridge there. So maybe you get laid off, but maybe there's a generous severance package. Or maybe there's, you get your unemployment and it's a pretty good solid situation. You're kind of just leaving one phase of life just to go to another phase. Okay. So the 12th lord to me feels it's not as traumatic as the 8th lord. A period of the 9th lord is the same almost as the 12th lord, because period of the 9th lord, it's 12th from the 10th. Remember, 10th house in your chart represents career. So 12 houses from the 10th house is the 9th house. A lot of times there's either resignations, layoffs, retirement. It's kind of like the 12th house on another octave. but it does represent endings. A lot of times these type of endings result in like someone going on a sabbatical, or somebody going on a trip, or somebody having some sort of space where they're really doing some spiritual searching, or they're doing some sort of they're looking for the deeper meaning of life. That's what the ninth lord will typically do if it ends your career. Period of the eighth lord. If you're in a period of the eighth lord, there could be a sudden termination. Okay, it could come out of nowhere. It could be a complete shock. Remember, the eighth lord represents secrets. So if you have a very secretive management or secretive people above you, be careful, especially if you're in a period of the eighth lord and you sense something's brewing. So that's always a possibility. Now, the eighth lord is very volatile. The eighth lord could also present a situation where you're suddenly terminated and suddenly promoted at the same time. So eighth lord is very volatile, but the eighth lord can also leave where you're suddenly terminated and just in complete shock and disarray. So be careful. A period of the sixth lord can lead to termination because of accusations, conflict, either with the employee or the employer. Okay. And the sixth lord represents accusations and conflict that may be true or untrue. So let's say you have somebody gossiping on you and they tell your boss some sort of lie or something like that. And it's not even true, but they still take action on the accusation. And maybe there's some sort of, misunderstanding there. That's sixth house, because the sixth house represents imbalance. It represents accusation. Also, you need to check if you're in a period of sixth lord from the moon. So check six houses from your moon, and it's almost like the same as a period of the sixth lord. And that has to do with accusation, lies, and jealousy. So if you have a lot of people that are either jealous or want to sabotage you that are above you, that could be during a period of the sixth lord or sixth from moon. So always check those planetary periods. Now, oftentimes, you want to check your environment. We're running these periods all of the time. So just because you're in a period of the sixth lord doesn't mean you're going to get terminated. You want to look for a lot of confluence in your chart. So for example, if you're if Rahu's transiting six from moon and you're running a period of sixth lord, and you notice there's a lot of gossip and toxicity in your environment, well, then the factors would lead that most likely there's going to be some sort of negative situation in your job. You see, for example, the sixth lord could represent just a lot of hard work, overtime, and a new health routine as well. So it doesn't necessarily mean you always want to be aware of the environment. Okay. Now, I'm going to take a look at the astrology chart of Steve Jobs, because if many of you understand the Steve Jobs story, was if you watched the movie with Ashton Kutcher, you're probably aware that Steve Jobs basically helped found Apple, and things were going very well. And then in 1985, there was like new people brought onto the board. I might be wrong with how the situation exactly played out, but essentially Steve Jobs was forced out. So he was forced out of his own company in spring of 1985. So we're going to take a look at Steve Jobs' chart just to understand what planetary periods was Steve Jobs in when he got forced out of his own company that he helped create, which is quite interesting. Of course, if many of you understand the story, he later came back. Over 10 years later, he came back and he basically reformed Apple. But let's talk about the specific period in spring of 1985 when Steve Jobs was forced out of Apple. So let's take a look. So the first thing we want to look at, let me grab a pen really fast so I can use the paint program to show you all. So Steve Jobs, interestingly enough, in 1985, spring of 1985, he was in a Mercury Saturn period. Okay. So Mercury Mahadasha, which is the larger period, but the sub period was a Saturn Mahadasha, followed by a Ketu period. So this is very interesting. So after the job loss, he was in a period of spiritual searching for real. And I don't think they covered that I don't know if they covered that exactly in the movie, but he definitely was in a period of searching with Ketu. Okay, so we got to look at where Mercury is. Mercury and Saturn. So look at that. Both of the houses that we talked about that lead to job loss, both of those planets are in. Isn't that amazing? Look. So Mercury's in the 12th house, which can represent layoffs. Okay. And then look at this. Saturn's in the ninth house. Again, this layoffs. Okay. And then Saturn rules the 12th house as well. You see how all this confluence is happening? It isn't just one single event. We have all this activity happening between the 12th Lord, the ninth Lord, and then Saturn. So most likely, I don't know how this situation happened, if how it played out. Was he, I'm assuming maybe he was forced to resign or forced out. It wasn't necessarily a termination per se. It's more like being forced to resign when we're looking at the 12th Lord and the ninth Lord. And Saturn, because it was the Bhukti Lord, it can be very harsh. So Saturn can create conditions where you feel forced out. Okay. So sometimes people aren't terminated per se. Sometimes people are literally given no other option in that they have to resign. Here's your severance. Here's your back pay. Okay. Sign the dotted line. Thank you. Have a good day. So that's probably what we see in Steve Jobs' chart when he left Apple in spring of 1985. So the 12th Lord was involved, ninth Lord. So it doesn't seem as, it's not as traumatic as the sixth Lord and the eighth Lord. So maybe the movie was uh from the astrology chart, it didn't seem as harsh. Okay, it's like being forced out. So that's the example chart I wanted to give you all, and that was really easy to see, wasn't it? It was really amazing, and then followed by a K2 period of spiritual wandering. So Saturn was in the ninth house, and he went on this spiritual quest. Now, the spiritual quest that people go on when they leave a job in a period of the ninth lord can be all sorts of things. Not everybody does the eat, pray, love situation. Some people might just study for a while, take some university courses, brush up on some knowledge, study some philosophy. Sometimes that's what people do. But that's what we see in Steve Jobs' chart. If any of you are wondering, if you're in a potential period of job loss and you don't know how to read your chart, of course, you can get a reading from me. But if you have your chart, there's some pointers on how to look at it. Let me know what you all think down below in the comments. And thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.